The IT department has received the message from the sales manager saying last week he had a user and that user's laptop died. And when his laptop died, he had saved a lot of documents locally on the laptop, and all those documents were lost and they could not be retrieved. So now we want to redirect the documents folder on all users' computers in the sales department to a shared folder. So ultimately, the goal, I want to create a shared folder, and I'm just going to call it sales-docs. I want Bob Ross's documents to be redirected to this location. So the goal, if Bob Ross logs into computer A, B, or computer C, when he logs in and clicks on documents, I want that to automatically connect back to this shared folder. Now, he doesn't necessarily notice that. He just clicks on documents and he sees all of his normal documents he would see. After lunch, Bob logs into computer B. He clicks on documents and he sees the same exact folders. He creates new files. Those new files are automatically saved into this location. Now, he logs into computer C and he sees all of his data, even the new files he created, because that too just connects back to this shared folder. So we have to configure this. I want this to apply to sales users. To do that, I'm going to create a group policy object, which we will call a GPO. And I'm going to apply that GPO to the sales organizational unit that we created. And in that GPO, we're going to say redirect the documents back to this shared folder. Back on my server, the first thing I'm going to do is create a new shared folder. So I'm going to go to my C drive. I'll just right click, new folder, and I'm going to name it sales-data. I'll go to the properties, and on the sharing tab, I'm going to click advanced sharing, share this folder, and on permissions, I'm going to click full control. So this is going to assign the everyone group full control. That's not as bad as it sounds. We'll see why shortly. And we do have a lesson coming up that covers NTFS permissions and share permissions in great detail. So now I have a shared folder. To verify it's actually shared, I'm going to go to run and I'm going to type / RTS-DC1. And I get a list of all the shares. So I have my 2 shares related to Active Directory, and we have our sales data, which is an empty shared folder right now. I'll just close those windows. Now I'm going to go to group policy. So tools, group policy management is in the list. In group policy management, I have my domain, RTS networking. Under that, we have Sydney, our OU structure, the users, and that sales users. Sales users is where I want this policy to apply. So I'm going to right click, create a GPO in this domain and link it here. I'm going to name this sales-redirect. So that's going to be the name of the group policy object itself. If I expand sales, it shows up right under that. So I know this is the location it actually will apply. When I right click the sales redirect, I'll just go to edit and I'll put this in full screen. Under my user configuration, I'm going to expand policies, Windows settings, and folder redirection is in that list. So you'll see that here. Now I get a list of many of the folders from my user profile. Like you'll see contacts, favorites, videos, musics, documents, desktop, app data. Whichever ones you want to redirect, you just configure. I'm going to redirect just the documents, but the configuration for the redirection is the same for any of the folders you choose. Same options. I'm going to right click documents and go to properties. Not configured is what it's set to right now. We have 2 configuration options. Basic says redirect everyone's folder to the same location. Advanced says specify locations for various user groups. The only difference, if I choose advanced, when I click add, it says browse for a group. I'm just going to click advanced and find now. And I'm just going to pick some random group out of the list. But I could say if you are a member of this group, then I want you to be redirected to this path. And I could do that for multiple groups and have them redirected to different paths. Now, the policy still has to apply to your user account. So your user account would have to be under the sales users organizational unit because that's where the policy applies. But if you have several hundred users in that one OU, this is the way to say, I want some of those users to be redirected to this shared folder on this server, other users redirected somewhere else, and it's all predicated on their group membership. But I'm going to cancel that. And I'm just going to choose basic because we don't have many users. The root path, that is the path to the shared folder, //RTS-DC1/sales-data. So that's my UNC path. Now, an interesting thing here is this example. It says for user Claire, this folder will be redirected to, that's the path I typed in. RTS-DC1/sales-data, the username. So in their example, Claire documents. For every user that this policy actually applies to, it's going to create a subfolder with the user's username. So I'll see the username, and inside of that will be the actual documents folder, and that's what's going to contain their actual documents. There is a settings tab here. Whenever you see a settings tab on a policy setting, you always click on it. Sometimes there's useful stuff here. Grant the user exclusive rights to documents. That means only the user has access to their documents. That's why I said earlier, the everyone full control, not a concern, because even as an administrator, I do not have access to access the documents that users have redirected to that location. Only they can see their documents. Move the contents of documents to the new location. This applies to existing data. If I apply this policy right now, do I want data that you already have saved in documents to be redirected to the share, or do I want it to remain only on your computer? Depends on what your needs are, but this is how we control it, and the default is to move. Then we get this setting that applies to Windows 2000 and Windows XP. We don't use those, so we don't care about that. And what happens if the policy is later removed? Leave the folder to the new location, or redirect the folder back to the local user profile. If you leave the folder to the new location, the user will continue to be redirected to that location, but this policy just won't exist. But the setting still applies. Any new users you create in the sales OU, they just won't be redirected, but existing users would be unchanged, still redirected to that shared folder. If you redirect when the policy gets removed, it's going to point them back to the local documents location on their client machine as if you had never configured redirection. Now, normally, if you're going to remove this policy and just stop redirection, redirect the folder back to the local user profile is normally the one you would choose. But we're going to leave all that as default and just click OK. Now we get a message saying if you're using 2000 or XP, you have to go change some other permissions. We do not care. Nobody is using XP. So that is done. Now I'm going to open Active Directory users and computers. So I'm going to go back to my tools, Active Directory users and computers. And I'm going to drill down to that sales organizational unit. So Sydney users, sales users, which we created in an earlier lesson. And I'm going to create a new user. My new user is going to be Sam, last name Johnson. User logon, S Johnson. So first initial, last name. And we'll set the password. I'm going to deselect. User must change password and next log on because I don't want to have to reset it just for the demo. Next and finish. Now, normally you'd be completely done. Sam just needs to log on and he's going to be redirected. But because we are only using servers in the lab environment, for Sam to log on to a server, he does need to be a member of a group that has special access. Now, there are several groups you could choose, like server operators, backup operators, but I'm going to choose domain admins because we're going to do some other things with SAM. So I'm just going to type domain AD and check names, and it finishes that, domain admins, and OK. Now, we're only doing this because we're in a lab environment. If your user has like a Windows 10 client, Windows 11 client, or even an older client, you don't have to do anything. They just log on to their clients. But as a virtual machine, Windows 10 and Windows 11, it will require more resources than the server operating system. Far more resources than the server operating system because there are so many services natively built in. So for all our demos, we're only using servers in the environment, but it gives you the same exact effect you would get. Using a client machine just consumes fewer resources. So everything looks to be done here. We have a user, Sam Johnson, in the sales users organization unit. That is where the policy is applied. So Sam should get that policy. I'm going to go to RTS Serve 1, and we're going to sign in. Well, I guess I need to sign out first. I'm going to sign in with Sam Johnson. S. Johnson was the username. That's our password. And it should say applying folder redirection policy. And there it is right there. So we know everything is set up correctly with the policy. I'm going to open documents and just put something in it. So new file. We'll say sales Q1 projections. I'm going to browse to that share, which was / RTS-DC1. Shows me all the shared folders on that server, sales data. That is the folder with the username S. Johnson. If I open it, that is the documents, and that is the sales Q1 projections. Now, that's an empty document, but Sam can open it because it's his file. So we know that totally worked. I'm going to switch back to RTS-DC1 for a moment. This is the server we saved the file to. So if I open the C drive, sales data, that's the S. Johnson folder. Now I'm not going to have access to the files. If I open documents, you get this message that says you currently don't have permission to access this folder. Then it gets a little weird. It says click continue to permanently get access to this folder. One would think I just click continue and my problems would be solved and I would have access, but you won't. If we continue, it says you have been denied permission to access this folder. To gain access to this folder, you need to use the security tab. If you try to use that, it says you must have read permission to view the properties of this folder. If I try to assign permissions at any level, even here, if I click continue, it says you do not have permissions to view this object security properties. Even as an administrative user, you can try taking ownership. There's nothing I can do within this other than taking ownership of all of that data, which you would only do if your user quit and you need access to that data. Then I would take ownership of it. But if you were to do that, even that gets audited. So there would be a log that I have assigned myself access and that I've viewed Sam's documents and whatever files I clicked on. So no one other than the user that's been redirected has access. So secure, and they have peace of mind of knowing IT is not just browsing through all of their stuff. But that is our folder redirection in its full glory.